A work group in IPA is a collection of people, courses, budgets, really any data that IPA can work with is all collected in sort of the bag that is a work group. And you can have multiple work groups if you want. Some schools will have one work group for the whole school. Some departments will have one work group for the whole department, and other groups will have multiple work groups for themselves because perhaps they have multiple sets of courses and faculty that don't really overlap and they don't want to see all that data together. And so that's a great case for having multiple work groups. Regardless, the page you're looking at right now is the work group page, which is always accessible by clicking on this gear icon at the top of any page. The purpose of the workgroup page is to let you edit workgroup specific information, specifically who is in your workgroup and what is their role, what tags does your workgroup have, and what custom locations does your workgroup have. Both concepts I'll explain in a moment. First, the people and roles tag is probably the most important one. It lets you add and remove people from your workgroup. This controls access to your IPA data, but it also controls who IPA considers to be your faculty or considers to be a graduate student who's available to be a TA. Any of those people need to be in this workgroup page. You can see the page is broken up here. We have staff, we have instructors, student, which represents graduate students, not all graduate students, but graduate students who you might employ as a TA or reader, and then this kind of catch-all unassigned area. So if I want to add someone as staff, I can search for them, wait a moment, and select them from the list, and I'll click Add Person. And you'll see here they appear in the list. Remove does exactly what you would expect. And then clicking over to Instructor, you'll notice the list of people is different. If I click back and forth between staff and instructor, you'll see some of the people are the same and some are different, and that's important. You can be both staff and instructor in a work group. You can actually have as many roles as you want within a work group, and as you would expect, having more roles gives you access to more things. Staff have access to everything and can edit everything in IPA, so this tends to be reserved for CAOs, MSOs, academic coordinators, graduate coordinators, and people in those roles. Instructors only have access to teaching call forms, which will appear in a later video. They don't have access, for instance, to your budget. And students only have access to TA forms. They have probably the least access of anyone. I can add and remove people from the instructor tab or the student tab using this search over here. And you'll notice both instructor and student have this extra column named type. Now this is purely optional, but what it lets you do is it lets you get more specific about, in this case, what kind of instructor is this individual. We have the instructor role, which is just generic, but I could also say that they're an AI or that they're a pre-6 lecturer. And in other modules of IPA, say the budget module, if I have gone through and added that level of detail, I can break down all of my other views at that level of detail. I could say, what do my pre-6 lecturers cost versus my AIs, or questions like that. But again, you don't have to use it if you don't need it. The student tab has a similar one, instructional support being the generic student role, and then Masters and PhD if you want to slice and dice your data that way. Moving over to tags, a tag is a optional feature of IPA. It's a simple label with a color, and if you make them, you can use them in other modules in IPA. Specifically, you can tag courses with one or more tags, and then filter in many views in IPA by tag. So you can say, show me only courses that are in the help desk analysis tag, or show me only lecture times for server administration, or show me only budgetary consequences of software development courses. If that sounds useful to you, great. If you don't know what you would use it for, you can skip over this entirely. And finally, locations. This is where you maintain your list of custom locations. If your department or school controls any of its own space, you would need to list it here so that it can appear in other areas of IPA. And when I say control your own space, I'm referring to space that the registrar does not control. So if you plan any courses where you get to tell the registrar, we have this room, it's fully under our control, and this is where the course is going to be held, that's the type of space that you would list here. And you want to list it at the room level. So I have Cur 186, but if I wanted Cur 187, I could go ahead and just add it here.